On the streets in Bahrain, still extremely tense. More protests in the capital are taking place. There's been confirmation now that 4 people have died in the past 24 hours and dozens are reportedly missing. Well, we can see armoured vehicles on the streets. We understand some of them to be tanks. Capital Manama locked down after the army said it had taken control of key parts of the city and that it had banned any protests.
Bahrain Defense Forces will take all strict measures to secure safety, order and stability for the benefits of the country. The forces also urge all the citizens to keep away from and not to protest in the vital areas of the capital, as this could harm the traffic and lead to fear and panic. It could also cause traffic jams, which would endanger people's lives and interests.
Let's talk to Reem Khalifa from the Al-Wasad newspaper in Bahrain. If you can, describe the situation on the streets of the capital as night has fallen.
So far, I'm located in Thief district. It's very quiet. The traffic is you hardly see a car. It's not really traffic. Usually, this is the weekend in Manama and lots of activities going on. Still, the military troops is still around locating the Manama capital and the Pearl Square. And still that we keep receiving a lot of calls from families, relatives about missing people, children. Even some of them, they started to announce through social media about missing child, especially among children. Many, even still there are some wounded people who still waiting for their blood donation in the hospital. The situation is not pleasant in the time that we are having, a GCC foreign minister holding an extraordinary or exceptional meeting in Manama, and in any minute we might have a press conference with the Bahraini foreign minister.
Yes, like you, Reem Khalifa, we were waiting to hear from the foreign minister who's with his GCC opposite numbers. Embarrassing time in many ways for them all to be there discussing this while the capital is actually locked down. But tomorrow the promise or the threat, depending on which way you look at it, is for more people to take to the streets. Do you still see this set of demonstrations having some momentum?
Obviously, what happened in the Pearl Square is some, the people started to call it a sort of a genocide, and some people describe it as a massacre, and this is something unusual to be happen. Some people saying that this decision was not made by Bahrain itself. It could be by some neighboring countries, which they thought maybe forming an elected civil government or having winds of change and freedom might affect them. So this youth movement, the United Youth Movement among Shia Sunni, has to stop. And while we see on the state TV and a number of the pro-government columnists appearing on BBC and Central TV trying to manipulate the fact by saying that this youth was only among Shia, which is not true, and the state TV trying to promote, saying they were carrying weapons and knives and carrying flags of Hezbollah, and this has nothing to do with the same scenarios which we used to have in the previous incidents and events.
Thank you, Reem Khalifa. Thanks very much indeed. We're going to hear now from the UN Secretary General. Talked around about an hour ago about what was going on in Bahrain.
The reports from Bahrain overnight are deeply troubling. Here, as elsewhere, violence should not be used against the peaceful demonstrators and against the journalists. It must stop, and those responsible must be brought to justice. In responding to peaceful protest, authorities have an obligation to respect human rights. There should be no violence from any quarter, I urge all parties to exercise restraint.
Well, Patty Culhane in Washington there, he was Ban Ki-moon urging restraint, not just in Bahrain, but in other Middle Eastern countries, and saying you've got to bring in reforms. Is that the same message that's going out from the United States Capitol?
Well, it's the same message we're hearing from the Obama administration for all of the countries where we're seeing protests, except when it comes to Iran. President Barack Obama this week much more forceful, criticizing the Iranian regime, saying that the people of Iran should take to the streets, and saying that the Iranian regime wished to shoot people and beat people. So his words were much more forceful when it comes to Iran. They are being much more careful when it comes to Bahrain. You cannot overstate Bahrain's importance to the U.S. military. It is the headquarters for the Fifth Fleet. So what does that actually mean? Well, any Navy personnel that go into the Central Command area, the Middle East, they have to report to Bahrain. They control all of the Navy's forces. It is key to the U.S. military. So we know today, I've spoken to officials at the Pentagon, they say they are keeping a close eye on it. They're talking to their counterparts, urging restraint. We know that the White House is monitoring the situation. Not sure if President Barack Obama is going to pick up the phone and call the king, but we do know that senior administration officials have reached out, including Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, to her counterpart, saying they are very concerned about the violence and they are urging restraint on the way forward. This has been a bit of a surprise, I think, to U.S. officials. If you go through WikiLeaks and the cables, one of the most recent from 2009, they described the regime there as forward-looking and sympathetic leadership. So it seems as if the U.S. government taken back a bit today when it comes to the position of the Bahraini government. But obviously it is a huge concern in Washington, and they are, as they always say in these situations, keeping a close eye.
Yeah, Patty, thanks very much indeed.